House Targaryen had survived much in the way of strife and challenges to its power since the doom of Valyria and the establishment of their Westerosi kingdom under Aegon the Conqueror. Yet the greatest of such challenges would come from within their own bloodline. In later years, this would take the guise of the Blackfyre Pretenders, legitimized by Aegon the Unworthy. However, the most destructive and calamitous threat to this particular dynasty came in the Dance of Dragons. The House of the Dragon was to be divided right down the middle, associating into two separate factions, the Blacks and the Greens. The damages caused by this division and what was to come next would have consequences that would reach right into modern-day Westeros and facilitate Robert's rebellion and the toppling of House Targaryen at the hands of the aforementioned usurper. In this video we shall recount this tale of treachery and intrigue, distrust and discord, and fire and blood. And we also invite you to jump into the fray with our sponsor today, Game of Thrones Legends. It's a puzzle RPG for mobile devices in which the cast of the Game of Thrones world shall become your allies and foes across epically satisfying Match 3 battles. You need to work out the ideal combinations of characters, equipment and special abilities, and then find the matches you need to unlock their powers and destroy your enemies. Certain combinations give special synergies, and if you can find moves that combo together, you'll really start to feel the power of every match you make. You can collect resources and build your kingdom on the strategic level, and even make alliances with other players to enhance your power for PvP challenges. In the meantime, take on the PvE campaign to test your skills and collect your favorite heroes, from little Arya Stark to gigantic dragons, all brought to life with beautiful art and effects. And to start off strong, if you get the game for free using our link in the description or the QR code on screen, they will also throw in a bonus pack with 50 gold, 3,000 food, and a daily summon token to get a new champion right away. So go forge your own Game of Thrones Legends today. As a precursor to our retelling of the Dance of the Dragons, we must first qualify our main source of information for this story. The primary source handed down to us, which details the events in question, is a book called Fire and Blood, a history of the Targaryen kings of Westeros, written by Archmaester Gyldayn of the Citadel of Oldtown. To this day, maesters argue whether or not Archmaester Gyldayn's account of events is biased, something that could well be the case due to the particularly pervasive influence of the High Towers, one of the main factions in the war, over the denizens of Oldtown. The seeds of war are sown in days of peace, and in the case of the Dance of Dragons, they were sown during the most peaceful epoch of Targaryen rule in Westeros. Jaehaerys the Conciliator was one of the finest kings to rule over Westeros, and a man to whom all who followed were matched against. The reign of the Conciliator lasted 55 years, and followed directly on from the mysterious death of Maegor the Cruel in 48 AC. Although Jaehaerys was not more than 14 years of age when he ascended to the Iron Throne, his reign would provide the oh-so-desperately needed balm to the mess which the clumsy and aggressive Maegor had allowed to unfold across the realm. His reign remains the most prosperous in the Targaryen kingdom's rule of Westeros, and this is recognized in a plinth to the Old King, which still stands to this day at the Citadel of Oldtown, and bears the following inscription: "He bound the land together, and made of 7 kingdoms one." Jaehaerys truly was the consummate king, embodying the wisdom, sense of justice, and patience required to bind what was still a young kingdom together in such a manner so as to survive the years to come. Another necessary quality of a true king is the capability to produce an heir, and in this regard, Jaehaerys was also more than proficient. Jaehaerys had married his youngest sister, Alysanne Targaryen, some years prior to 50 AC. Alysanne would bear many children during their long marriage. However, disaster and misfortune would befall the progeny of the Conciliator. In 52 AC, while Alysanne was pregnant with Jaehaerys' first child, the would-be Aegon, she was attacked by 3 holy sisters and went into premature labour, causing the child to die some 3 days later. Thankfully, the birth of her next child a year later, Princess Daenerys, was a far smoother affair. Although Jaehaerys had wished for another son, he finally had an heir of his own to secure the succession. In 55 AC, Alysanne gave to Jaehaerys the male heir he so craved, as the white-haired Aemon was born on Dragonstone. At the Queen's urging, a dragon egg was left in his cradle. Another son, Prince Balon, was born in 56 AC and named the Spring Prince for the season of his birth. However, as the Starks are so fond of saying, winter was coming. In 55 AC, a brutal winter struck the realm, and with it came the plague known as the Shivers. The disease hit the cities of Westeros most brutally, and would last right into the depths of the year 60 AC. The Shivers affected highborn and low alike, with one of its final victims being the 6-year-old Princess Daenerys. Complaining of a cold, she would be found still and lifeless little more than a day and a half later. Jaehaerys would throw himself into his work in order to avoid the crushing grief he felt with the loss of his child and the devastation which had been wrought upon his lands. However, some joy would come to him later in that year, as Alysanne would give birth to their 5th child, Princess Alyssa Targaryen. In total, Alysanne would give birth to 13 children, 9 of whom would make it to adulthood. However, next to none of them would outlive their father. The other children born between 62 AC and 80 AC included Maegelle, Vaegon, Daela, Saera, Visera, Gaemon, who was born premature and died at 3 months, Valerian, who died a few days after his first birthday, and Gale, who, although he was frail of form, would survive his childhood. Aemon was named the heir to the Iron Throne and Prince of Dragonstone in 62 AC, and wed Lady Jocelyn Baratheon, who in 74 AC gave birth to Jaehaerys' first grandchild, Princess Rhaenys. Jaehaerys' second son, Balon the Brave, wed his eldest sister Alyssa in 75 AC. Alyssa bore him 2 sons, Viserys in 77 AC and Daemon in 81 AC. At first, the many heirs of Jaehaerys left the royal family confident enough to allow Maegelle to join the Faith of the Seven as a novice, and his 3rd son Vaegon to join the Citadel. However, this confidence would soon evaporate with the coming of the dire winds of fate, which wrecked and ravaged the House of the Dragon. The first inkling of this forthcoming issue of succession came in 82 AC, when Daela died of childbed fever, followed by the death of Alyssa in 84 AC through childbirth. These tragedies began to drive a wedge between Jaehaerys and Alysanne, which was widened beyond repair in that same year due to the exploits of their daughter Saera. Saera had bedded 3 knights and intended to marry all of the young men as a reflection of Maegor the Cruel and his 3 wives. Jaehaerys dealt with the 3 men, even defeating one of them in a trial by combat. He subsequently sent Saera to the Faith of the Seven, where Maegelle could watch over her. However, in 85 AC, Saera escaped and fled to Essos, where she became a whore in a pleasure garden in Lys. When Alysanne claimed that the Lyseni had turned their daughter into a whore, Jaehaerys brusquely responded, "She always was." The king would never attempt to reconcile with or retrieve his daughter. The next tragedy came in the guise of Princess Visera Targaryen, who was betrothed to Lord Theomore Manderly in 86 AC. He was an old, yet still formidable warrior who had outlived his 4 previous wives. Visera despaired at the thought of marrying this wizened and stout old man, yet maintained more sense than her aforementioned sister Saera. She would first attempt to seduce her brother Balon. However, Balon remained heartbroken from the death of his wife Alyssa and refused her entreaties. Therefore, Visera allowed herself one final night of drunken debauchery before being shipped to the north and the embrace of her soon-to-be husband. However, as the evening developed and the princess and her closest friends became more imbibed, the idea of a drunken horse race entered their minds. This was to have devastating consequences, as the carefree and intoxicated princess was thrown from her horse on the streets of King's Landing and broke her neck, dying instantly. Alysanne was completely devastated by the death of a 3rd daughter in a period of not more than 5 years. As such, she begged her husband to reach out to Saera, but the steadfast Jaehaerys refused outright, in what became known to the chroniclers as the First Quarrel. Their marriage barely survived the 2 years of disagreements which ensued. The marriage of their first grandchild Rhaenys to Lord Corlys Velaryon in 90 AC would eventually lead to a thawing of relations. In the years to come, Alysanne looked upon this wedding as one of the last good days she enjoyed, as it was one of the final moments in which all of the family that remained to them were gathered as one. The later reign of Jaehaerys, who at this stage had come to be known as the Old King rather than the Conciliator, was marked by even further devastating losses to his family. In 92 AC, his eldest son and heir, Prince Aemon, was struck by a crossbow bolt to the neck while he was fighting Myrish pirates in what was little more than a minor skirmish upon the Isle of Tarth. Jaehaerys would then pass over Aemon's sole child, Rhaenys, who was pregnant with a daughter, Laena, and instead name his son, Balon the Brave, as the new Prince of Dragonstone. Balon was much loved, yet despite this, some disagreed with this decision, first and foremost among them Queen Alysanne. The matter was further complicated when Rhaenys gave birth to a son, Laenor, in 94 AC, providing a viable line of succession on the Velaryon side of the family. This started the second quarrel between the pair, as the Queen was angered by her husband's decision to overlook Rhaenys on account of her being a woman and naught else. Though they were reconciled again by their daughter Maegelle in 94 AC, the Velaryons were enraged, and Corlys resigned his position as Master of Ships on the Small Council to return to Driftmark. In 99 AC, Princess Gale died of what was officially reported to be a bout of summer fever, when in truth it was a case of suicide, as the princess had thrown herself into the Blackwater Rush. This was the most crushing of all the heartbreaks Alysanne had ever endured, and from that day on, she would no longer be able to bear the crushing weight of residing in King's Landing. Less than a year later, the old king's beloved wife died, whilst still grieving her beloved daughter, and the weight of such loss and heartbreak would never be shared again. Instead, the weight of a life of tragedy and loss inexorably fell upon the shoulders of one man and one man alone. This double loss was compounded in the year 101 AC, as the Prince of Dragonstone, Prince Balon the Brave, died of a burst appendix, and the father was forced to outlive the son. Murmurings of civil war between Rhaenys and Viserys forced the old king into action, and he sought out the counsel of his last remaining son, Archmaester Vaegon. Vaegon offered his advice, which was duly taken by the decaying old king, who called a great council of all the lords of Westeros to decide who would take up the mantle of king upon his inevitable demise. Harrenhal was chosen as the location, for it could house as many as 500 lords and their entourages, although this number was to double, as some 1,000 lords gathered in Harrenhal for a 6-month span. Some of these lords arrived just as the Great Council was ending. As a result of the council, the nearby town of Harrington briefly became the 4th largest settlement in all of the kingdom, dwarfed only by King's Landing, Old Town and Lannisport. The council would last for a span of 13 days and discuss 14 claims, 9 of which were quickly discarded without any need for further deliberation. Vaegon was also passed over due to the rights he had sworn as part of his commitment to the Citadel. Princess Rhaenys and her daughter Laena were subsequently denied any right to the throne due to the fact they were both born of the fairer sex. This left 2 main candidates: Prince Viserys Targaryen, son of Balon the Brave, and Laenor Velaryon, grandson of Prince Aemon Targaryen. Primogeniture favoured Laenor, who, through his mother, was descended from the original heir to the Iron Throne, Prince Aemon. Viserys, however, was the last Targaryen to ride upon Balerion the Black Dread prior to the dragon's death in 94 AC. Furthermore, Viserys was 24 years of age and had a 4-year-old daughter named Rhaenyra at the time of the Great Council, as opposed to Laenor, who was still in his minority as a 7-year-old princeling. One major factor behind Laenor's claim came in the guise of his father Corlys, who, through his travels and effective management of his fief, had become the wealthiest man in all of Westeros. When it came for the lords of Westeros to cast their vote, one final factor overrode all others, as they wished to ensure the male line of Viserys took precedence over the female line of Rhaenys. Although the Maesters refused to release the details, it is rumoured that Viserys won the vote by a margin of some 20-1. Laenor's votes were comprised of the Velaryons and their closest allies, including the Celtigars and Bar Emmons, alongside the Baratheons and the Starks, and their substantial number of vassals. The Maester Yandel has speculated that Stark's support emanated from the decision to grant the new gift to the Night's Watch, which disgruntled the Northern Wardens and their major vassals. King Jaehaerys had not attended the Great Council, and once news reached him of the verdict, he honoured the decision of his lords from the lofty halls of King's Landing. Viserys was named the new Prince of Dragonstone, and Sir Otto Hightower of Old Town as Hand of the King, replacing the deceased Balon the Brave. For the final 2 years of the old king's reign, Otto would effectively rule in the place of the bedridden monarch, who was looked after by his young daughter, Lady Alicent Hightower. In 103 AC, the old king breathed his last at the substantial age of 69. The realm and even the lands of Dawn mourned his death, as his body was cremated within the Dragon Pit and his ashes interred with Alysanne's ashes on Dragonstone. So began the reign of King Viserys and the true incubation phase of the Seeds of the Dance of Dragons. Special thanks to our sponsor Game of Thrones Legends, an epic puzzle RPG. Get the game for free with a special bonus pack included if you use our link in the description or our QR code on screen. In the next few episodes, we will discuss the political intrigues which led right up to the outbreak of hostilities. But in the meantime, we're planning to cover the battles of many other fantasy, sci-fi and space opera universes, so make sure you have subscribed and pressed the bell button. Please consider liking and sharing as it helps immensely, and don't forget to comment. We will try to read and respond to every comment, as we want to know what you think about this video and which videos you hope to see in the future. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.